Shipping has been a cornerstone of human development since the first industrial revolution. Countries increased their wealth, trading with one another, and nations became superpowers controlling the sea. If there is one city that can represent the various stages that this vital part of our modern society has passed through over the past 500 years, that's certainly Rotterdam. The growth of the city over time tells us a story of how this industry began and how it evolved. Although no longer the world's largest, Rotterdam is still by far Europe's largest port. It connects the most industrialized region of the continent to the rest of the world, providing easy shipment to its industrialized products as well as raw materials and energy to make them. To picture its importance, in 2017, the Rotterdam port handled roughly 14% of all container traffic in the European Union. That's a very big number for a single port. To put it into perspective, Europe has over 300 ports currently in operation. Rotterdam's success can be partially granted to a few key factors. For instance, its convenient position on the end of the Rhine River, the German industrial success, and its natural harbor that facilitated its expansion. Despite that, the city had no shortage of challenges to get to where it is today. In case you like what this channel creates, feel free to subscribe and like the video. It will help to support the channel. The origins of Rotterdam go back to the 13th century. At that time, the settlement that lived at the end of a river called Rotte needed a solution to the constant problem of flooding that were common in the area. As many other Dutch cities did, they dammed the river. This settlement would then become known as Rotterdam. Later, in the 14th century, Rotterdam was granted rights to build a canal to the neighbor city of Overschie, connecting itself to the northern cities. The construction enabled Rotterdam to become an option to the shipping that otherwise would go to the city of Schiedam, which at that time had a monopoly. Slowly, the city's focus changed from fishing to trade. The city of Delft also built its own canal and they competed for the shipping traffic between the Netherlands, England, and Germany. Ultimately, Rotterdam would become the center of this trade route. The original port was located where is currently the city center, but later it grew and absorbed the other nearby ports. The 17th century was especially prosperous for the Netherlands and most of Europe. The colonies were doing well, and the Dutch were the maritime power. In 1602, a man by the name of Johann van Oldenbarnevelt founded the Dutch East India Company, or VOC, the world's first multinational company, and holder of a highly profitable monopoly of the European Asia trade. The establishment of operations in Rotterdam by the VOC boosted the port's importance, and it would soon have to be expanded. In the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution was sweeping Europe. The introduction of steam propulsion and metallic construction enabled a revolution in ship design. They got larger, heavier, faster, and had more capacity. But this also challenged the operations of the ports. Bigger ships need bigger harbors, bigger waterways, and the old waterways in Rotterdam would not be enough to let them sail through. So, in order to dock this new generation of vessels, Rotterdam built a new waterway connecting the city to the sea. It was creatively named New Waterway, but in Dutch, I won't dare to pronounce. The port was also expanded over the city's south bank with the construction of the harbor of Regenhaven. Nowadays, the area has been fully redeveloped, but the port still has its headquarters there. Later, the harbors of Wal and Haven began to be constructed, that doubled the size of the port and took it away from the city center and towards the sea. This was an important trend that would continue over time. At this point, Rotterdam was already Europe's largest port. The Netherlands long had a position of neutrality regarding its foreign policy. It had served the country very well so far. The First World War had come and gone, and they did not get drawn in their neighbors' mess. However, it would not remain this way for much longer. During the Second World War, the Netherlands became too important for Nazi Germany reach its goals. The Dutch remained firm and kept their neutrality for as long as they could, but this would not be enough, and in 10th May 1940, the Nazi army initiated its invasion. Rotterdam was core to Germany due to its strategic position and for handling most of the importation of ores, coal, and grain that were vital to keep the wheels turning in the war effort. The fight for Rotterdam was perhaps the fiercest in the Dutch campaign. To get the city to surrender, the Luftwaffe heavily bombarded the city. Many lives were lost. The old medieval city center was pretty much completely destroyed, as well as a third of the port. Later on, it would turn out to be an opportunity for Rotterdam to rebuild and address some of the problems it had. Nowadays, Rotterdam is an architectural reference in Europe, perhaps one of the most modern cities in the continent, with fancy glass skyscrapers and everything that comes along with it. Although I'd much rather see Rotterdam with its medieval atmosphere. Up until that point, most of the shipment was done via bulk cargo, where the cargo, mostly commodities, were transported unpacked inside the ship or pelletized for finished goods. In the 50s, a not so new concept would come to revolutionize the industry: the container. The containerization solved many problems that the industry was facing. For instance, a container ship can easily be loaded and unloaded in a matter of hours instead of days. Also, it could be directly lifted from the truck and rail to the ship and vice versa. That meant that intermodal transportation has just become much more connected and efficient. The labor cost was also much lower because the handling was far more automatized. Last but not least, the safety of the cargo was also vastly improved. Since the container will not be opened until its final destination, theft and damage became more rare. The drawback is space, and containers need a lot of it. So, to handle this new large scale shipment, Rotterdam opened Eemhaven in 1966, where the first container ship docked at the same year. This terminal was totally dedicated to container transshipment. Containerization grew exponentially. In 1968, the Rotterdam port was handling around 65,000 containers. In 1969, it grew to 121,000, and in 1971, around 250,000. In the early 60s, globalization and trade were booming. That meant two things: one, more ships, and two, bigger ships. As a result, the port was getting busy. Congestion became a risk for the efficiency of the port. The authorities back then had two options: they could widen and deepen the waterways and the harbors to accommodate these larger ships, but that was more of a short term solution because the banks of the channel were already pretty much developed. Or they could take the port out of the mainland, no longer needing the channel. That was a continuation of the seaward trend that was already going on. Then, in the 60s, the port started to build a massive man-made island on the North Sea, which was given the name of Maasvlakte. The port built on top of it was called Europort. The reclamation of the island was an incredible undertaking for the time: 40 square kilometers. That was about a fifth of the entire land area of Rotterdam. At that point, Rotterdam port was already the largest in the world, and it would remain so until 2003, when it was surpassed by Singapore. By the end of the 20th century, there was almost no space left for expansion and storage. The authorities soon noticed that to retain the lead, a further expansion would again be needed. Construction on a second island, adjacent to the first, commenced in 2008 and was opened for use in May 2013. The expansion enlarged the port's area by 20%, reaching 31,000 acres. Currently, the port is owned by the Port Authority of Rotterdam, or POR for short. The corporation was created in 1932 by the city of Rotterdam to operate the port, which means it is a public entity. Initially, the POR was a branch of the municipality of Rotterdam, but in 2004 it was privatized. Currently, the two stakeholders are the city of Rotterdam with 70% of the shares and the Dutch government with the rest 30%. The company is doing pretty well. It has consistently surpassed 200 million euros of profit. The revenue comes basically from two sources: port dues from shipping and the rental income paid by the companies that operate inside the port, such as the oil companies. Today, Rotterdam is the 10th largest port in the world. The scale of operations is impressive. The petrochemical sector is one of the largest in Europe. There are 6 oil refineries plus 15 terminals to unload the crude and more than 50 different chemical companies operating within the port. All the big names are there: Shell, BP, ExxonMobil, all of them. Connected with the port are several pipelines that go as far as the city of Ludwigshafen in Germany, home of BASF, the world's largest chemical company. These pipelines transport crude, refined oil, chemicals, industrial gases, and others. As far as I can see, Rotterdam has been becoming something more than just a port, as it aims to be an energy hub for Europe. Now it processes significant amount of fuel, but for the future, the POR is skipping ahead, investing in renewable energy with projects to build offshore wind farms and hydrogen conversion and storage. This can serve as an example of how ports can leverage their positions and infrastructure to make the transition and increase their importance in the economy of the future. Thank you very much for your time, guys. I really hope you enjoyed and take care.